First of all, we have speaking for us Ronnie. Ronnie is an Israeli dissident. He's awaiting trial for disrupting the headquarters of the Israeli genocidal company Elbit Systems in Bristol, which is where I am in the UK. There is a crowdfunder for Ronnie's trial. We'll put that up in the chat so that you can support Ronnie. So Ronnie, welcome this evening. I'm giving you the floor now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I purposely didn't prepare a whole set of figures to quote, because I think we have to understand kind of that this is more than just about the numbers. The numbers are absolutely atrocious. The carnage is absolutely unbelievable. I think that in this forum, what I would like to discuss is that the 7th of October was a watershed moment. Nothing will be the same after that. And even though we don't have the exact details about what happened, because there is a whole lot of different forms of disinformation, a whole lot of different things that we still have to uncover, the perception of the Zionist state and the perception of both of Israelis of themselves and of the world versus the Zionist state has tremendously changed. Gaza, the situation in Gaza did not start, as you know, on the 7th of October. Gaza was established as a refugee camp in 1948 to house the unwanted people, the surplus human beings who were ethnically cleansed from the Nakab region in the southern part of Palestine. It was quickly transformed into a concentration camp. And what has been happening, what is changing since the 7th, is that concentration camp, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, has been or is being transformed into an extermination camp. We are seeing a total assault on a civilian population. The civilian infrastructure has been totally decimated. We know that Gazans are denied access to fuel, water, food, electricity. Pretty much every hospital in Gaza has been bombed by now. But even more than that, even water reservoirs in Jabalia, for example, you could see the water gushing down the street when Israel bombed the water reservoir to barely sustain the people who are being targeted as we speak. So this is not at all a quote-unquote war on Hamas. This is a war of decimating Gaza and against all 2.3 million hostages in Gaza. And this is how we should look at it. What are the plans for Israel? What does Israel plan to do? I think it's open for discussion, but at the very least, there is the attempt to ethnically cleanse the land, to at the very least drive people away as much as they can from the Gaza Strip, or to contain them even in a smaller territory than they were today, up until now. And the sentiment in Israel across the board is that you see top officials as well as leading celebrities and so on, leading singers, singing to soldiers about how they're going to turn Gaza into a beach town, an Israeli beach town. This sentiment was there all along, but what is evident, especially for those of us who speak Hebrew, so I can get I have more than one source of information basically to get the sentiment of what is happening around the world and also what is happening inside Israel proper. What is very clear is that there is a wall-to-wall support for genocide, a wall-to-wall support for eradicating Palestine of Palestinians. Again, I'm choosing my words very carefully here. So we see the most atrocious statements by politicians, including even suggesting dropping an atomic bomb on Gaza. And the backlash for that minister suggesting that was that basically, first of all, it wouldn't go well with the rest of the world. I mean, that obviously, that is such a grotesque and outrageous statement to make that the world will have issues with that. And secondly, because it didn't take into account the hostages, the 200 Israeli hostages there. And he actually said, well, in that same interview that he gave, he said that this is somewhat of a price that we have to pay, because for him, the price of the life of an Israeli soldier is the same as the life of a hostage, and he doesn't want to risk any lives of Israeli soldiers. And so the backlash was only based on that. It was not at all based on the idea, that monstrous idea of dropping an atomic bomb, whether it is feasible or not, that's another story, on 2.3 million people. Unfortunately, this is not only the sentiment among politicians in Israel, as I mentioned, leading public opinion makers and celebrities and so on are all in line. Even the so-called satirical, critical media, the liberal Zionists, they are mocking Palestinian lives. They are advancing genocidal sentiment in the media, on television. I'll give you one example. Those who were demonstrating against Netanyahu, the so-called pro-democracy demonstrations, which I was very much opposed to. Those people, for example, you had a group called the White Coats, who are medical personnel who were demonstrating against Netanyahu because, according to them, that so-called judicial overhaul would have harmed the Israeli health system. These same people are now issuing statements in support of Israel bombing medical infrastructures in Gaza, bombing hospitals. So this is where we stand. Israel was established as a white supremacist entity, as a fascist entity from the beginning. But while fascism was somewhat implicit, somewhat explicit, it has since, over the past decades, has become a full-on, explicitly fascist state with clear fascist expression and practices. What is happening now is even worse than that. It has gone beyond full-on fascism, and I would clearly say that it is going into, or has went into, a Nazi type of entity with clear genocidal intent and practices being implemented. This is how we should look at it. And you remember this famous quote, first they went for the socialists, but I wasn't socialist, then they went for the trade unionists, and so on. Israel is cracking down on anyone and everyone who is voicing their dissent. Obviously, the 48ers, those who are second-class citizens, are being targeted. Those in the West Bank, also the handful of Israeli dissidents. Just yesterday, you had former legislators, Palestinian legislators, who wanted to organize a demonstration in Nazareth, simply calling for the end of the war. That's all. That's all they wanted, to hold a sign. And they were all taken into questioning. Many hours spent being questioned at the police station. An Israeli activist who simply posted pictures of of Palestinian children who were recently killed was arrested.
1 minute.
Okay, he was arrested under some law that I didn't know about before, which is something like intent for treason. Apparently, there is such a thing. They have legislated, the Israeli parliament has legislated yesterday a law saying that systematic consumption of Hamas material, Hamas or ISIS, by the way, they use the term Hamas-ISIS as one official term right now. So any systematic consumption of Hamas or ISIS material will land someone, an Israeli citizen will land them in prison for a year. This is what we are facing. Israel is clearly exposing its true face I'm happy to say, and I'll end with that, I'm happy to say that there is a lot of support around the world. People understand that they need to get out on the streets, to do whatever they can. Not all of us have to get arrested, but we all have to speak up, to voice our, it's beyond dissent, to demand the action across the world, to do whatever we can, whether block train stations or demand of our politicians to simply do their job, apply sanctions, and protect the people of Palestine right now, because we really have no time to waste.
Thank you, Ronnie. I think the world is waking up